Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, asarimhotep, with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. Today, we have a very, very special guest who is hailing all the way from South Africa to join us and tell us a little bit about his life and what he do. And that is Dr. Aunkh Khem, and he is a medical scientist, a metaphysician, an educator on ancient Egyptian culture, language, and arts, and African spirituality, which we call Kimoyo here on this channel. He's a very dynamic brother, and I'm just touching the surface on all that he does. But we'll find out a lot more when we return in just a moment. Peace and blessings, and welcome to the Mbongi. Again, I am your brother, Asar Imhotep, and today I am in Malvern, PA, and taking a break to have a conversation with our brother out in South Africa. And as always, we want to thank you all for joining us. And before we start, just a couple of announcements as always. And so first and foremost, thank each and every one of you who have joined the Patreon page and have been supporting the upcoming documentary film, Chiana Into, where we will be demonstrating and showing and giving visual to the research done by myself and other scholars, connecting ancient Egypt, its language, its culture, its philosophy, its inner logic with modern day Bantu speakers, all the way hailing from Cameroon to the Democratic Republic of Congo to Uganda, all the way to South Africa. And so this is a very dynamic project, and we are currently raising funds for the proof of concept trailer. And so you can support by going to patreon.com/SarMhotep and joining the Patreon, or you can go to the website that is dedicated to the project, ChianaIntoFilm.com. That is ChianaIntoFilm.com, which you can see at the bottom of the screen there. And so we're on our way to Egypt soon, and so all funds will be geared towards that trip to get some of the live footage. And there's a bigger fundraising project after this. So hopefully we can get into Central and Southern Africa as a result of our fundraising efforts. And so thank each and every one of you who have already supported. And, we thank you for your continued support and for those who will be supporting soon. So again, patreon.com/AsarMhotep. And want you to visit the MaduAndelaPress.com website so that you can purchase the latest text from Dr. Chinemamema Mukinge out of the Democratic Republic of Congo, titled Muntu Wine Zombie, Portrait of Human as God's Special Creation. And no doubt some of his insights will be going into the film, and can't wait to show you that dynamic regarding the Baluba people, again, out of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And on the same website, or you can go to Amazon, it doesn't matter. You can get my latest text, Chiluba Maweja, Yoruba Orisha, an ancient Egyptian Ankh, an exploratory etymological study. And, we are developing a new field of study called Into Khem. And so it's going to be a discipline, an African centered, in essence, Egyptology, without necessarily it being Egyptology, because our focus is the Nile River civilization. So coming all the way from Egypt, ancient Kemet, to the areas in the Great Lakes and beyond. And so this is the first publication, in this series of texts. So, make sure that you check that out. And coming out this fall is my latest text, volume 1 of a 3-part series titled Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, volume 1, Towards a Meaning for the Place Named Kemet. And you already know I've been in these debates regarding the place named Kemet, the toponym. And so this is going to be my, for the most part, full treatment. There's 2 other volumes that are coming after this in edited work with contributions from other scholars in part 2, in volume 2, that is. And in volume 3, it's just going to be primary text with the hieroglyphs and the Greek, script hieroglyphic systems and transliterations and translations of important texts regarding the ethnicity, the description, and the likes of the ancient Egyptians. So it's going to be a resource book for those needing that content. So I think that is it for the announcements for now. And so without further ado, I want to introduce our special guest for the evening. And so Brother Dr. Aunkh is the current National Director of the Indigenous Knowledge-Based Technology Innovation Unit of South African Department of Science and Technology. He is a medical scientist with special interest in research, development, and innovation of African natural medicines. A cosmeceuticals, nutraceuticals, if I'm saying these words correctly, and when he gets on, he can correct me if I'm wrong, health infusions, and technology transfer for socioeconomic development. He is an applied epidemiologist and African medical practitioner with passion in ancient but scientific African and Afro-Asian healing arts. He holds a Master of Science as well as a Master of Public Health and a PhD in technology innovation. His special craft is in systematization and interfacing ancient yet global knowledge systems with emerging sciences. For example, quantum mechanics, pharmacology, epigenetics, biotechnology, astrophysics, etc. He serves in South African Health Products Regulatory Authority and the Ministerial Advisory and Presidential Master Plan Committees on Medical Cannabis. He has formerly worked as a Deputy Director and Medical Scientist heading the Emerging and Re-emerging Infectious Diseases Unit of the National Department of Health. He was also the World Health Organizational focal point for integrated disease surveillance and response in South Africa. And lastly, he is the founder of the Amenra Institute, whose objective is research and development of African-based knowledge systems, especially the Bantu and Kemetic sciences of consciousness. Again, I want y'all to put your hands together, snaps and claps. Give us your full of undivided attention for our special guest, Brother Aunkh Khem Savan. Peace and blessings, good brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to see you, brother, and thank you so much for inviting me to come and have a conversation with you.
Indeed, indeed. The honor is all mine. We have been quote unquote Facebook friends for quite a while, and I'm seeing the posts and the of your travels, of the conversations you were engaged in, the work that you were doing in South Africa, and I was like, it's about time, at least my network around the world gets to know who you are and what you're doing, and so the honor is all mine. Especially you taking the time out of your busy day to have a conversation on the Mbongi with the Mbongi family. And so, since you are new to the channel, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of where exactly you're from, where you were raised, and, given the state of the world, how did you get into this African stuff? Even though you're an African on the continent, it seems kind of, rare that, a lot of us wants to tap into those ancient customs and those ancient sciences. So what is your motivation for that? Uh, you can go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you. It's as I said, it's really an honor to be here with you, brother asarimhotep. And your question is multifaceted, but I will start off by saying yes, indeed, I am the son of the soil here in Azania, also known as South Africa. Those of us who are in the Pan-African movement will say occupied Azania, because South Africa is just another direction. I was born in the northern part of Azania, bordering Zimbabwe on the north, and Mozambique on the east, and Botswana on the west. I grew up in the village. I'm a son of a village engineer. My father was very innovative. So my interest in innovation actually comes out of what I observed him, building canals and lakes and various ways of coming up with different types of agriculture, metallurgy like this. Uh, my mother was an African medicines practitioner. What out here will say an inyanga or nganga in the Congo, and also a diviner or a sangoma here in South Africa. So my interest in African, let's call them sciences of consciousness or African spirituality. Of course, it's in my blood by virtue of me being born out of the womb of a woman who was an African medicines practitioner and diviner. However, growing up in apartheid South Africa, we tend to reject these things. I'm one of those who, uh, when I became a teen, I said, "Mom, I don't want to be involved in any of these things that we do here at home." And of course, by then I was heading off to university, and I was pretty much exposed. I was one of the few that were exposed to scholarships. So I studied in different countries. I studied in the UK, in London, and part of my PhD, I actually came to Houston, Texas Medical Complex, Medical School, Rice University. So we were in the process introduced to the various aspects of African knowledge systems. It was when I was in, well, let me start here. There was time that I had to make a U-turn And here there is a saying that when when you receive a calling, when you are called by the ancestors, if I may put in this way, you will have a thorn somewhere, on your foot, or you will have a scar. So things were happening, which resulted in me wanting to know more about our knowledge systems. And at this time, my younger brother was the one who told me that, hey, do you know that in our totemic poem, that they say that we're from the Sudan, we're from somewhere around Ethiopia and Egypt. Uh, my younger brother is 9 years younger than me, and he was not even at university by then. So I was like, you're losing it. You've totally lost it. How can we be? How can we come from so far? So I was still asleep myself. But that then led me to then asking some of the elders. And around these times, we were already interfacing and interacting with some of the freedom fighters that were leaving the country to go to exile. So in the process, then we were introduced to African knowledge systems, but it wasn't, let's call it deep. It was very dry, superficial. And when it comes to spirituality, of course, it's what was reduced to just African in skins dancing around the fire, drumming. But when I then came to the university and came to the city, I met a gentleman who who then said, if you're really searching for a systematic way, something that has been coded properly, you need to look into ancient ancient Egypt, because that's where your people, and he was referring to our surname in particular. It was like your people. You, when you beat your chest, you in your isitakazelo, in your totem, you say you are the ones that come from Embo, um, and Kemu. Uh, I didn't follow these things, so ultimately I started digging, and with time I met some elders. One of them, I will show you a book by one of the elders. But I met two elders that had two organizations. One was called the Kara Heritage Institute, and another one was called the Karaites Institute of Africology. And these elders were the two that I knew at that time. They just returned from exile, but these are the two that I knew at that time, early 90s, that were presenting African spirituality or African knowledge system and history uh, in such a way that it was packaged, in such a way that it was palatable to my mind, to my heart, and the connected various tribes here in the well, let me call them nations here in the south, to the various nations or even nomes in ancient Kemet. Um, and this really attracted me so much, and one of them then involved me a little bit in some of the workshops where I was acting as a scribe, and writing the minutes and the reports. And that's how I then got interested in African spirituality, in particular from the Kemetic side. But uh, just 7 years ago, I got another scar that led me uh, to go back home, and for 14, 15 months I started taking lessons, initiatory lessons from three elders in their 80s and 90s in the villages, for me to become a sangoma, or an African medicines practitioner, um, and diviner, irrespective of the fact that by then already I was PhD. That didn't count. Basically, I had to go and unlearn everything, and learn directly from the wisdom keepers, um, uh, uh, in my province. Even though I met all these various wisdom keepers around Africa, even here at home, I worked with Baba Credo Mutwa in digitizing most of the 6-minute clips that you see on YouTube. That's the work that I did with African Wisdom Keepers organization. So I was funding that as the manager of indigenous knowledge systems here. So I had to go for an initiation in the village, and of course, coming out, the instructions were clear that I have to come and teach again. When I was in London, and also in the US, I also came to Washington and New York. I was introduced to most of the organizations over there, but the one organization that I still associate with, I still build there's a strong relationship in terms of the bridges that they've built here in South Africa, was the Osaroset Society and the writings of Rao Neferamen. And I also hosted them here, one of the paramount kings of Osaroset, Europe. I hosted them here in South Africa. They also actually invited our own National House of Traditional Leadership to build this relationship with some of our people who are doing their best to actually bring back these teachings, systematize these teachings, but also remind us here, on the continent, but also yourselves in the diaspora, that we are one people, we are one nation. You were not taken as slaves, but you were taken as engineers, as doctors, as kings and queens, as princes and princesses. So my work and my job, the interface in government and as the director of the Amenra Institute. So this work kind of like interface and morph into each other very easily. And of course, in the process, I got to meet you, Wujau, and many other brothers that are doing the work, especially the young authors. My quest here and my work is to develop African knowledge systems. And when I see that you guys are putting down some work, that's why I decided to order some of the books, some of your books, and in bulk, and distribute them here in Azania.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. You dropped a lot of jewels, and some of them we'll kind of revisit throughout this conversation. And for those of us out here, because of the transatlantic slave holocaust, our direct knowledge of individual, family lineages, have been erased because we've been here, for 400 years. And so, one route that has to be taken is the genetics route, right? Where it may not be able to give you, individual ethnic groups, but it can give you a general area of where your direct, maternal and paternal, lineages hail from. And so my paternal is Europe, but my maternal is in Mozambique.
Mm.
And so a lot of people don't realize that, a number of Africans were taken from Mozambique and Madagascar, to the diaspora. And so on my mother's side, that lineage, comes directly from there. And so, these connections of being one and alike is something, one of my favorite authors, period, is out of Azania of the Amazulu, and that is Jordan Gabani.
Mm.
And, his 1979 text Conflict of Minds, which is one of my favorite books ever. And he talks about, because he was in exile as a result of his writings, in apartheid South Africa. And when he was in exile, he went to various places in West Africa, and he actually came to the United States for a little bit. And what's interesting is that he built up a relationship with Dr. Molefe Kete Asante, the founder of the Afrocentric theory or whatnot. But in his writings, he says that what he thought was unique he uses the word Buntu, the Buntu people in what is now Azania. He thought it was unique to this area until he went and was exiled into West Africa and saw that there was a lot of symmetry in terms of thought, in terms of culture, in terms of just the inner logic of the inner philosophy and ways of being amongst many West African nations. And and for him it was kind of a wake-up call of the commonalities that you would see across Africa. And he actually explored the ancient Egyptian as well, and was comparing the inner logic of ancient Egyptian system to his initiations in understanding of his culture of the Amazulu. And so with that being said, because you mentioned that at least for your lineage, that there's an oral tradition of coming from Sudan. And so in your studies, and I'm not sure if you've named the actual group that you are with, but if you have it, if you can state, what have you found in terms of the inner logic, the philosophy, the ways of being and culture that you studied in regards to, the people in Sudan and the people of ancient Egypt, with your own all the way in Azania?
Yeah. Well, I have two bloods, as it were. So from my father's side, I'm a Chabalala. So from my father's side, I'm a Chabalala, which will be classified today as Swati or Swazi. And from my mother's side, she's Tonga or Tonga. And actually the origins of the Tonga, Zonga people, you find them in Mozambique in greatest numbers. So the language, my mother's languages, are also related to your paternal maternal line. The Makua people, in the northern part of Mozambique, but there's also the Makua people this side of South Africa, and of course, the straddle Malawi, Zimbabwe, Zambia, all the way to Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. Our people are all over there. Well, when it comes to the similarities or the remnants of what we may call Central African Nile Valley knowledge systems and ways of life, you see all these things written all over the African continent. I'm also a little bit fortunate to have traveled almost all countries, on the continent, including North Africa. So you see, especially when it comes to the esoteric nature of the practices, you will find that those practices are very strong parallels between Southern African spiritual traditions, Central Africa, and of course, people like myself and yourself who study these things and also get inspired by how the Nile Valley ancestors coded their way of life and spiritual way of life. You see these things, and at the heart of this, it's actually cosmology. The various cosmologies. They may be a little bit scattered, but when you look into the concepts of man, a human being, so to say, you find that most African traditions in the South, we consider a human being is a spectrum. It's not just a discrete flesh and blood, but it's a spectrum of various aspects and attributes, gross and subtle, and even much more subtler. And you see this also in terms of things that we may not talk about here because we don't want to also brandish things that are supposed to be left in the village, onto social media. But you see the knowledge that talks to the fact that beyond this physical, gross physical matter, there is the concept of the mind, umcabango, which when we go back, we hear that the elders that arrived here many years ago, they called Bona Abakulu Basekemu, the ancient ones of Kemu, which means Kemet. They were concerned so much with the teachings of that which was even beyond the mind. Hence, part of their work, they then wanted to understand what it is that we are. And today, because we're using someone else's language, but in our languages and Kemetic languages, it's clearly defined that we are a composite unit of physical reality, of energetic, complex bodies, of the non-local mind, which is not the subject of the brain. Then the essence of who and what we are, which is then the real consciousness. Because you actually thank you so much, because you are the one that gave me conflict of the mind, the whole concept of uqobo, which is equal to ntu, actually, or consciousness. You find all these things written all over the cosmological teachings of many nations of Southern Africa. I'll be graduating 15 or so students this June from the Amenra Institute, and they come from different traditions, and most of them, part of their homeworks was to go back to their elders and find out, hey, what talk to us about the mind. What is the nature and the structure of the mind? What is this thing that we call spirit and soul and consciousness and will? And it's interesting that students from Malawi, from Zimbabwe, from the Swazis here, the Zulus, the Xhosas, Vendas, all these nations have this spectrum of what it is that we are. That's in terms of the core, but you can look into certain practices that in Kemet we call the Hebnen, the Hebsed. My people will still do that, and it's actually still done all the way to Malawi and Zambia. I heard that in Uganda, wherever you find the Ngoni people or Nguni people, around solstice, especially in December, the king must demonstrate that he still has it. So we then enact all those things that were enacted in the olden days in the Nile Valley.
Excellent, excellent. I want to get on your interest in in medicine. So I know you said that you were initiated into the Sangoma tradition, and it's interesting because I did some linguistic analysis, and this will be coming out in the upcoming text. That it's possible that Sangoma in reality is a variant of Sim in ancient Egyptian because Bantu Ng, corresponds with Egyptian M in the Mazda suffix in the Sangoma. And so, there's just a whole Sim priest. So if this pans out, I would argue that you are in the tradition of a Sim priest of ancient Kemet. But can you tell us, because I think I've heard that from Credu Mutwa as well, that there's this certain type of, for a lack of a better term, injury that determines whether you should be a Sangoma or not. And I'm wondering, was it because of the injury, however it manifested, or was there always just an interest in healing arts in medicine, and then that was just kind of reaffirmation? Tell us how that went down.
Mhm. Not at all. I mean, of course, growing up in what I would say was a medical, a traditional medical school and hospital. When you are young, you have no choice. You simply follow what your parents, teach you, and and you follow everything. Um, when I went to high school, as I said, I was not interested in that, but mainly out of the bullying. We went to Christian schools, so you don't want to be seen to be associated with something that is evil, something that will take you to hell. And this is the generic bully, is the whole system, because even the laws of this country demonized African ways of healing. We had what is called a Witchcraft Act. So you can imagine what follows in terms of the regulations, which drove these ways of knowing underground, virtually underground. Yes, from the Nguni perspective, as I said, yes, you must have a scar. They will say you must have a scar. Yeah, you must have a thorn bothering you somewhere else. Even though in the family there are people who may know that you are born to be a Sangoma, to be the same priest. You It's not something that you choose. It was not something that I chose. I'm a medical scientist, for God's sake. And what am I doing with things that are almost like a quantum physics quandary, where more than 75% of whatever happens there is no, we don't have a way of measurements, people like me and you who are scientific. So yes, it took a scar, a particular scar that it's not necessarily a physical scar, even though there may be those marks in some of us. But the scar is really the scar of the soul, is the scar of the spirit that will render everything impossible for you to basically. It simply says you have no choice. This is what you are born to do. That's in terms of my interest in African medicines, or in me ending up getting initiated. But in terms of the medicines, as a healing fraternity, but also the products themselves, I did this work before I was initiated, years before I was initiated. It was born out of me being the deputy director then of emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases in this country, and witnessing our people dying, not having access to health facilities, let alone medicines. And COVID demonstrated this again, that the West doesn't really care. And as an applied epidemiologist, I don't only just crunch numbers from the back office. I had to go to the field and really synthesize data from environmental perspective, from the clinical perspective, um, from the lab, and the general public, how the public behaves. And I was like, we sitting with the wealth of medicinal plants that these elders, in certain cases, these elders are using to help themselves and their families. And on the background, the doctors and the nurses are also using this. And I was like, there's something not right here. So that's how I took interest in technology innovation of natural products, in particular medicines. Little did I know that it's all it's the synchronicities that were ultimately driving me to be initiated. After I said yes, 100% yes, I will. This is why I'm here. I accept that this is why I'm here. That's how it happened. And so far, just to share with your viewers, ever since I took this job, as a director of indigenous knowledge-based technology innovation in South Africa. Since I took this job when I came back from London in 2007, we have we have up to 15 indigenous knowledge-based laboratories doing research on African natural medicines, on cosmeceuticals and nutraceuticals, and of course health infusions. The stuff that we drink not because it's tea time, but it's the culture that we are always taking various types of infusions for various reasons. We I led a team that even developed a degree, now being taught in 2 universities, is the degree of indigenous knowledge system, the Bachelor of Indigenous Knowledge Systems up to PhD level, looking into innovation, law, culture, environmental management, agriculture, health, and nutrition. Um, we we have we are setting up. We have spun out up to 55 small medium enterprises owned by our people, owning the value chains. So this is what drives me, brother asarimhotep, that when we look back to the Nile Valley, we shouldn't look at it just for us to go and become slick and sound nice. We should draw from what they did, and actually innovate and invent based on what our ancestors left us. So every time I go to the Nile Valley, um, I'm looking for all of this to come back and inspire my teams in these platforms of the medicines, the Cosme, like this, for them to come up with technologies that can be localized, to come up with industries that can be owned by our people, um, are moving forward, so that we, indeed, as Africans, can totally, finally be free.
Indeed, we are here with our good brother, Aunkh Khem Sama, from Azania, South Africa, for those who don't know the indigenous renaming. And, if you are enjoying this conversation, I'm going to need each and every one of you to that is right, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and make sure that you hit the bell so that you get all of the notices when we have powerful, powerful guests like that we have with us today. And we're going to continue the conversation, and I want to get into the Amenra Institute. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, and why did you start the institute?
Mm. You know, when I so this is how it started. It didn't start as the Amenra Institute. The brother who directed me to the Nile Valley um, said, you know, if you really want to know yourself better, learn but also share. So I had a smaller group then, and I'm talking, 98, thereabout, 96, 98, thereabout. It was called Kemetic Order. Um, this is the early days when we were interested in the fraternities, and the you know what I'm talking about. And however, when I was in London, that's when I made up my mind that when I come back home, I won't be working for the Department of Health. I won't be chasing, microorganisms and stuff like that. I wanna do something for myself, for my people. So, the elder that was guiding me when I was in London, who's a uh, Dr. Napata, who is a natural medicines healer. Um, he said, when you get back home, just build an institute, institutionalize. This knowledge needs to be institutionalized. We can't just be fly by nights, and be limited to more churchical organizations. We have to institutionalize and become, starting with higher education uh, uh, type institutionalization, which then should translate into economic organizations. So when I came down, I sat down with my then partner. She's a Ma'at Heru now. She transited, and two other friends, and we said, let's come up with an organization. And the organization, or the core, had to be, one, the educational aspect, which is the Amenra Institute. Then there was the arts aspect. There is a friend who runs the arts aspect, but more from the musical side. And another brother is more into crafts. He makes tables and all these things that we need in our offices. Now, the Amenra Institute, at the core of the Amenra Institute was to investigate these African knowledge systems, but instead of spreading it out, the core was that we need to understand who we are as a people. So it's limited to then understanding the science of consciousness, or if you like, the science of spirit, or the science of the soul, as is taught by our various nations here in the South, but elsewhere in Africa and in Kemet. But also then taking these findings and developing pragmatic and practical techniques and protocols that we can use to, if you like, to emulate the fifth, sixth dynasty, scholars like your, Karamni, Pta or Tep, Miriruka, Ankh Emheru, like this, so that we also have the codes and the protocols that govern those who say they are willing to be inspired by this way of life. So the teachings within the Amenra Institute involve us then looking into what are some of the high codes, African codes that can inspire us to be moral, ethical, but also leaders for the age of higher consciousness, if I may put it in this way. The idea is that whoever comes to the Amenra Institute should be able to apply these teachings wherever they are. Whether, for example, we have medical doctors, we have dentists, we have engineers, we have arts experts, we have leaders of, traditional leaders within the institute as students. So we inspire them that take these teachings that come from the ancients, because they are ageless and timeless, as you see in my Facebook, and find a way of molding them for the common man, molding them for today's time. But we need to upgrade the teachings. We need to update the teachings, especially using emerging knowledge systems from other, knowledge systems, like, emerging sciences, including other indigenous knowledge systems from other countries as well. Because knowledge is knowledge, also, knowledge is knowledge. We're using someone else's knowledge system in terms of these computers. So why can't we interface our own with other knowledge systems, but to emerge as an authentic umuntu, if I may put it in this way?
I have my mic on mute because I'm outside and I don't want all the noise to interfere. But I'm typing in and putting a link at the bottom of the. I'm sorry.
Yes, my website is it's on hold. It should be able to be, maybe in the next 2 weeks or so. We had to revise it. So
Okay.
in
So
the
this
next
is
two
a
weeks,
different link
um,
here. Let's see, because I did see that's to the LinkedIn. There's a Dr. Amenra.
uh,
It says Amen Elite Athlete. I don't know if that's you, but just let you know there's another
yeah.
Amenra.
No, I wanted to see if I could share how it looks like, but
Yeah, you
it's
can.
not. Okay, just a moment. It's not active at the moment.
Okay.
We working on it, but it should be up and running in the next 2 weeks. We had to do great work on it in order, for our people to benefit much more better. So let's see, how do I share? You have share here, right?
Yeah, you'll share. It'll pop up at the bottom, and then I got to add it to the screen.
Okay, share screen. Okay, let me see quickly.
Oh yeah. So when you click share, and then you say share screen, if you want to share your entire screen or a particular window or Chrome tab, if you're telling your entire screen, you have to click the entire screen, then share. So you'll see a blue line around the image, and then you can then you could click share. Then it'll pop up on my screen at the bottom. Then I can.
Okay. It looks like it's not working. That's fine. We in 2 weeks. It's the same URL
Okay,
as you should. Yeah, but it will be up and running in the next 2 weeks or so.
here we go. Yeah, I think this is what you're. Well, when people visit it now, this is probably what they will see. So let me share screen. On Chrome tab. Bong. And here we go. So
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
that's what they will see. Yes.
indeed, indeed. So they're working on the site to give you a more friendly user experience and with some, added content and value. So we, by the time that most people will see this, it more than likely will be up and running. So, but this is the link, the Amenra or amen-ra.org that we showed earlier. And so make sure that y'all, visit that. And let me unshare, get back here. And so,
So maybe if I may quickly, just for a moment,
go ahead.
uh, uh, so what they will see on the website and what we do in the main is that we we have monthly programs, 4 weeks programs that divided into various. So we have a curriculum, a full year curriculum, which is divided into, for example, Know Thyself, which covers the historical aspects, but we connect ancient Nile Valley and us in the south. So that's what we talk about, and from different nations of the south, so that everyone sees themselves on how we actually left Kemet and ended up in the south, or actually went up and then came down, as it were. Then we have 3 levels of Kemetic cosmologies. So it's three series of basic, then intermediate, and advanced cosmology, looking into Kemet or Nile Valley. And we then interface some of these teachings with cosmology and quantum physics, so that people understand that were we not, clipped, most definitely would have developed our knowledge systems to these levels, as well. Then we have aspects of Isintu cosmology, which then looks into the various Bantu cosmologies, but owning it home here, for us to be able to relate. In there, we include the Dogons, we include the Bambara, we include the Yoruba, we include the aspects of the Congo, the various Congo nations, are in those classes. We have classes on health, Ankh Ujasaneb series, the importance of, preventive or health preservation series. We also look into the sciences of time, calendars and astronomy, so that we understand why did our ancestors do certain things at certain times of the year, whether it ranges from agriculture, various types of initiations, and we also have aspects then that are inspired, the practices that are inspired by certain concepts, that will come out of the pyramid text, the coffin text, the various books of the Amduat, whereby we simply say, hey, if their aspiration was to be a bar or an Ankh, what were these processes? And then we look into various teachings of various, elders, whether written or also the practices, the exoteric practices, let me say, initiatory practices that we practice here, but linking them up with the, with the ancient Kemetic systems. That's in short the monthly series, or the lunar cycle series. But we also have a 13-month program, long-term program for those who wants to immerse themselves. It's an immersion program, whereby, it's more, there is the coaching, there is the participants have access to myself, whereby we have, one-on-one, and we tailor make a program for the individual according to their natural proclivity, where they come from, what they are interested in, but then give them these teachings as well. And I'll be also starting to do tours to Kemet and the Sudan. So there is something that we just put out actually on Facebook. So if there are brothers and sisters who would like to join us, in order to understand the Nile Valley, at least from the Southern African, perspective, um, uh, they are welcome to, to join us sometimes in December. It will be a 10-day tour in December. So that's in short what the Amenra Institute does.
Respect. And are there any texts that you are working on that will be, ready for the public, anytime soon? And if so, can you give us a little insight into to what's coming?
Yes, the for them to get an insight, I just published a paper which was, it's partly my PhD and partly my postdoc, um, uh, which was published on the Chinese Medical Science Journal. That journal was dedicated to the systematization of traditional medicines of the world. That it is essential that these ancient knowledge systems be systematized, but be explained according to emerging sciences. So in there, I published the model, the health preservation model, that is inspired by the teachings of Imhotep. So the text that I'm working on, it's on medical cosmology. So that's one. And then the second text is the conversion of my PhD, because the work that I'm doing is predicated on my PhD, my professional work. I develop what we call an Ubuntu-based bioinnovation model. And it is the model that looks into, how do we do indigenous knowledge-based inspired concept generation that leads into integral research and discovery, inclusive innovation, local technology transfer and demonstration, holistic enterprise development, and conscious commercialization. So that's my PhD, and that's the model that I brought through that PhD. And the core of the model is actually various Bantu, Nguni, and Kemetic cosmologies. So that's the second text that I'm working on. The conversion, the Ubuntu-based bioinnovation, it's almost done. It's easy to convert a PhD. That is almost done. So I have put a strict deadline for myself for September for it to come out, and it's also it's very academic, in that because we have this degree, this Bachelor of Indigenous Knowledge Systems, I'm writing it also as a textbook, almost like as a blueprint for lecturers, for teachers in indigenous knowledge systems to have the basis for teaching these children, because most of them are not like me and you. They don't have the basics of Africology or Afrocentricity. So that's what I'm putting together. Whereas the medical cosmology one will then inform systematization of African medicine system. Like, for example, you notice that I also studied in China and India. In China and India, as you may know, you can go to a university and spend 5 years and become a medical doctor, but prescribing natural remedies. So they have hospitals from clinics up to tertiary hospitals. They have universities. They have farms and farms of these medicines that are grown according to good agricultural practices. And of course, they've got good manufacturing practice. Well, but they have got a lot of industries that produce these medicines that are then used by clinicians in their hospitals. The same thing in India, the same thing in Korea, the same thing in Singapore, Malaysia. Basically, the Asian countries have that. In Africa, Brother Oser, we don't. We're not teaching our children about the sciences of our medicines that we have across the continent. We have not systematically codified the knowledge system to make it to come up with health theories, if I may put it in this way, which can be infused in the clinical practices. So this second text will actually inform curriculum development and the systematization of the health system, but on top of that, then inspiring the building of natural medicines industries on the continent. I currently serve as the only policy person of the guest policy person of the World Health Organization and the African Union's Regional Expert Advisory Committee on infectious diseases and traditional medicines. And this is where I would like this work to go, to be continental and not only limited to our country. And so far, they've bought to the idea, and so we have to make impact in these regional structures. We also need to make impact using these cosmologies when we go to other multilateral gatherings. For example, the Chinese president or the Indian president, when they start their speeches, they start off by saying that we have a culture and a heritage which is over 5,000 years old based on their cosmologies. And they will take a few minutes talking about the great scholars of antiquity. What about us? Our leaders have no clue. So we're trying to also wake them up like this by serving in these regional and multinational organizations where we unapologetically present that we had the Ptahotep, we had the Kunum Khofu, we had the Imhotep, we had the Merit Ptah, we had the Queen Tier. So we need to mainstream and interface these knowledge systems, and you are already doing that, Brother Oser. So I'm happy that you using what you have in computer sciences, or computer sciences is informing what you're doing in linguistics. This is the way to go. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point? Why are we doing this?
As you were speaking, I was trying to look up. I did an interview of a professor out of northern Ghana, of the Dagara people, and so you may be familiar with Dr. Maladona Somé
Yes.
from Burkina Faso. and his works. But there are other people from the Daguerre that many people may not know of. So there's a text by Dr. Alexis Tangon, and it's
Mm.
called "Of Life and Health."
Of life and health.
Correct.
Mm.
The language of art and religion in an African medical system. And if you haven't heard of it, I wanted to recommend it because what you were talking about, I think that would be a good text to add to your bag of wisdom
Thank you.
and give you some insight, at least from that perspective, the dagger, and you'll find many echoes of what you're talking about, in that text. And so Alexis Tangon, Tengan. It's called Of
Thank you.
Life and Health.
And health.
So,
Awesome.
alrighty. And, lastly, before we go, I also see you, in these martial arts poses and the like, what got you into the martial arts, and tell us about that journey, and how that fits
Mm.
into your overall scheme.
Yes, yes. Um, Martial arts. The person that inspired me was my mother's younger brother. He was one of the youngest, so he was like maybe 5 years older than me. So every time that I visited him, or every time he visited us, if I spoke from the side of my neck, um, I will I will bite the dust. So so one day I said, well, you have to teach me these things. So he was doing a in South Africa. There was no kung fu, because kung fu is Chinese. So kung fu was really banned, but it was mainly karate. So he introduced me to the Japanese style called Kyokushin Kai. So I've got some scars because it's full contact, you know. And so I did this when I started when I was 15, and transited to Shutokan when I went at varsity. But then when I was in before I went to London, I took interest in the healing aspects of martial arts. That's when I was introduced to what is called Qigong. Um, that it works with the bioenergetic feedback of the body, and there are healing propensities in practicing this. So I ended up joining the South African Wudang system. You say Wutang, you guys say Wutang, but it's really in the Chinese language is Wudang Wushu, which is predicated on the Taoist cosmology and Taoist healing arts. So I've been practicing that Wudang system, Qigong, or Wudang Wushu or Gongfu Kung Fu uh, since around uh, 20, 2009. And around 2010, I then took Shaolin Temple Kung Fu, not just Shaolin Kung Fu, but Shaolin Temple Kung Fu, meaning the core of the lineage is from the Shaolin Temple itself, and the lineage of masters are from the Shaolin Temple itself. When I when I went to China, I then transited. I still practiced all the three systems, but I then transited to the Wudang. It's called the Western Dragon Wudang system, and I also then moved to what is called Wugolong Shaolin. Most of you may know about the 36 chambers or something like that. Um, Actually, if you go to Shaolin Temple, there is a big poster of Wugulun. Wugulun was the brother who wanted to move out of the Shaolin Temple. And in that poster, not talking about leadership, but you'll find that there are some of the dark black Chinese and brown Chinese, whether they were of African origin. I don't want to go into that story, but their Buddha is also dark, a dark Buddha. But I took that style because they practice what is called Chang Wu Yi. Chang, of course, is the Buddhism, but Wu, it's martial arts, and Yi, it's medicine. So it's the form of Shaolin Temple martial arts that incorporate the martial aspect, but the healing arts. And the third style is called Chanja Chuan. The Chanja Chuan is the living treasure of China today, because the founder of this system, his name was called Chiang Nai-jo. He actually synthesized many Chinese systems, Wudang, Shaolin, Chang style, Baji. He synthesized them, but he was so meticulous in terms of the physiological application and the effects of the system on the body. So I am currently a more Chanja Chuan practitioner than Wudang and Wudang Wushu and Shaolin. And with it, then there is the Kalari Payato. Kalari is a system of one called Bodhidharma. Some of you might have heard about Bodhidharma or Damu, whom most people would like to say is a black man who went to Shaolin and then introduced, the Kalari, the five animal system to the monks in Shaolin. Now, Kalari is an Indian system. It's a South Indian system, which was practiced by the Siddhi, the people who practice the Siddha healing system, not necessarily the Ayurvedic. Well, it's two systems, the Ayurvedic and the Siddha system. And from the Siddha tradition, that's where you then find various Southern Indian spiritual traditions, including what is called Tantra. Hence, you put in there that Tantric, not associated with the craziness that you may know about, but it's really it's a way, it's a system of how we expand our consciousness by really living fully and authentically. And their systems, because South Indians are similar to us here in the South, and their cosmologies are also related to us. So you can see how their Ngangas, their Sangomas, their Shem priest practices and our practices are very, very, very similar. The Tantric systems and the Sangoma system are so similar. So that's my journey with the Afro-Asian, as I put it, traditions.
Indeed. Well, I appreciate, this small but impactful moment of time that you have given us. It shared, parts of your journey, and we definitely have to have you back on the show to discuss something, more particular, maybe in the realm of medicine. And it's ironic because I got these unreleased books from Dr. Khem Kiabonseki Fukiao, and one of them is on the plants and medicine, and we talked about how big he was, because of course he was an Nganga, into the herbs and plants and things, and so I can't share it with the public, but the lawyer who is over these texts, he is trying to negotiate, getting them the rights transferred and published. So hopefully, in a couple of years or so, these works will be available. And I mean, they're old. They're in typewriter form.
Wow.
So we got to retype, the entire text, and it's still got his notes and his handwriting and all of that. So it's a very old text, but hopefully we can get you back, and maybe I can share some stuff and compare it to what you're doing over there in Azania. But it has been a pleasure, and again, it is an honor to have you here, and I look forward to having you again. And again, I'm trying to get myself to South Africa sometime within the next year or so. So hopefully, when I do make it there, we can meet up in person. But continue to do the work that you're doing. You are having a big impact, and what you're doing is contributing for eternity in more ways than one. And I just want to say that you're appreciated all the way over here across the water, and much love and respect to you. And so, any last words? The final words of yours.
Mm. No, thank you so much, Brother Jose. We also, are so grateful that you made time to have this conversation with us. And the last words, talking about Dr. Fukuyao, I would say that we need more of Fukuyaos. Um, People who are practitioners of the traditions, not people who are just in checking the joint, but really the practitioners and the lineage holders, to be the ones that are also writing these things. But on top of that, people like him who had deep knowledge of the scientific world. I actually wanted to quickly. Well, I won't be able to share, but I don't know if you know Dr. Danny Nebudere. Damn, I've got a blurry screen, but I was also introduced to Africology by the author of this book, Africology, Philosophy and Wholeness and Epistemology. That it's important that we do not shy away from interfacing our own knowledge systems with other knowledge systems, because knowledge is knowledge. And it's up to me and you who are very fortunate to be young and connected to elevate our elders who who have done this work, but at the same time to stand on their shoulders and improve on the work that they've done. One of the elders over there in New York that I always visit when I come to New York, he always calls me and say, I need your commentary on my books, Ankh. I need your commentary. I'm writing about African spirituality. You are there. So there are certain things that definitely we're not getting right, but you are supposed to correct those issues. So I see you doing that. I'm like, this is it. It's not like it's not disrespect. We're not disrespecting any elder, including our own here at home. The Credo Mutua, the Matole Mutseha, the Baba Koka, the Danine Budere. They have taken us to a certain level. It's up to us to then proceed with the work to a certain level. So that would be my parting words to yourself and the listeners, but also to make sure that we find ways of coming up with practical applications of these teachings and these writings. We're sitting in poverty as Africans. We're sitting in poverty with such biodiversity, with such unique knowledge that no one has, with such a youthful continent. And yet we are the most sick, we are the most hungry, and we are the poorest and the scum of this planet. It just can't go on. It will take us, this generation, to build bridges and make sure that these teachings actually lift us. Because I'm convinced that Kemet or the Nile Valley and other African civilizations, they were such great civilizations because they had these knowledge systems. They used these knowledge systems. They invented and they were innovative about this knowledge system. So that's what we need to focus on. And not some tribal war, whether it's tribal wars here on the continent. And I see you guys over there, you are also having a little bit of tribal wars on some silly things. Honestly, we need to elevate the conversation. We need to build something that we have never seen, and we have that potential. So that's my parting words. And again, thank you so much, brother.
I share. This is another episode of the Mbongi. Our special guest was Brother Aunkh Khem Sama. And by the time most of y'all see this, y'all can go to the amen-ra.org website. And he's also on various social media, but you can check him out on Facebook as well. Make sure that you support, and some of y'all take these classes from the Amenra Institute. And let's build these bridges. Let's make these connections, and you will see that there is power in unity. And so, with that, until next time, y'all be easy. All right. And
Awesome.
1, 2.